This is the introduction for the Activate the Void project in Art Foundations. Your learning intention. I will be creating a 3-dimensional armature from toothpicks and glue, evaluating the cause and effect that different materials have on the overall structure. I will then add line design to enhance the overall composition. Your success criteria for this project. I am successful when the lines are straight, that you have created intricate line design on the piece, there is a hanging or stationary object inside the armature, there are no large glue balls, drips, or strings of glue attached to the structure, you demonstrate self-motivation, and you show commitment to that good, clean craftsmanship, going again back to that no glue drips thing. Also, when you demonstrate independence. Your ATL skills of self-management are going to come into play here. We're really looking at your ability to manage your time and tasks effectively. We will be giving you lots of time in class with us to be working on this assignment. So really looking at planning those short and long-term assignments and meeting your deadlines. We're also going to be looking at your creative thinking skills. So you're going to be using materials to create novel ideas, look at new perspectives, and create original works of art. Your ACT standard is meanings of words because we are going to be doing some vocabulary skill building this time. Your IB Global Context is personal and cultural expression, because again, we are looking at the ways in which we discover and express our ideas, feelings, beliefs, values, and culture, and the way that we reflect on, extend, and enjoy our creativity, plus our appreciation of the aesthetic. The statement of inquiry for this unit is that innovation and details create the overall aesthetic and composition. So if we're breaking this down, we're using very small, easily obtained materials, toothpicks and glue. And how we use those toothpicks and glue are providing that innovation component of the statement of inquiry. Plus, the detail that we're adding to the piece is going to increase its overall aesthetic and its composition. Our inquiry questions, and these are the questions that we should be thinking about while we are working on these projects. So what are the differences between the types of glue and their effect on the final aesthetic? Typically, we're going to be working with 2 types of glue. They operate very differently. How do they operate differently, and what impact does that have on your final project? Our next question, how can we use what we've learned in previous units in this current project? So pulling on some of that prior knowledge from last semester to have it impact our work this semester. And what do the many shapes included say about the person who created them? So what does your composition and your piece and your inclusion of certain shapes or motifs say about who you are? In this part, we are going to look at some examples. So these are previous student examples that are strictly using our toothpicks and glue, the same materials that you have at home. The world is really your oyster when it comes to the composition. Most students will start off with some basic shapes, so things like squares, rectangles, triangles, pyramids, and then build from that central point. So when we look at this one, we can see that this is actually a series of sort of pyramid-esque shapes with like the tops lopped off. And they're all interconnected around this one octagonal shape in the center. Here we have a series of overlapping diamond shapes that create this very cool three-dimensional quality. So these structures are meant to be viewed from multiple angles, so that like they would normally hang in our classroom and we could spin them around or walk around them and see them from all the varying points. So this is that same exact structure, just viewed from different angles. And you can see those open spaces in the center. That is called negative space. And we want our pieces to have some form of negative space. Now that negative space can be contained and encircled by toothpicks, or it could be open like we are seeing in this particular composition. You can really tell that students expanded their understanding of working in 3 dimensions with this, and that they were really able to visualize using physical materials, something that was 3-dimensional and unique to them. Most of these just utilize very simple geometric shapes. Remember, one of the success criteria is to create some sort of line design on the outside of your structure. You get to decide what that line design looks like. Some students do take the extra step that can be occasionally frustrating of trying to create a circular shape out of their wooden toothpicks. And I will show you how to do this in a future video, but be forewarned, it is not for the faint of heart, and it can be a little tricky. But it does allow for some really unique, interesting looks to the pieces since we are bending wood into a circular shape. And they've actually used that circular shape to create their design. Now, when we look at some of these up close, you're going to really see the difference between the 2 types of glue. So typically we use a wood glue or we use a hot glue. The differences between those 2 materials is the wood glue, or the Elmer's glue in this case this year, takes a little bit longer to dry, but in the end it provides a cleaner look, whereas hot glue will dry much faster, but it does tend to be more globby. It has all of those little like feathery spider-like strings that hang off of it, so it can be really tricky to use and use well without it looking sloppy on the structure. Now this student used the hot glue minimally, so you can see their structure just looks a lot cleaner. It looks a lot neater. Notice the minimal amount of glue that we're seeing here. We don't see like all of those long stringy bits of hot glue. It really does make for a stronger composition, but of course it takes a little bit longer because it does take longer to dry. So in this one we can really start to see some of those hot glue strings. That doesn't necessarily make this project bad, it just means that it looks a little different. So especially if you are looking here around the joints where the toothpicks connect to one another. And some of these are older pictures of student work that we're going to look at. Line design doesn't have to be overly complicated, and not all of these ones that we are looking at are advanced level work. Sometimes the structures are very simple ideas, a series of rectangular boxes stacked on one another. with a very simple line design. You can really see that the student experimented with a bunch of different textural ideas. There are sections of this that are completely filled in by the toothpicks. And then there are sections that are more open and airy. And how does that make the overall composition feel? Again, very simple line design that we're looking at here, but incredibly complex in the final composition.